gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Chairman and Vice Chairman of Council.
Thank you, members. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit. First item on the agenda tonight, apologies for absence. Councillor Holcourt.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors Cross and Doku.
Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Muriel Jolly.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have declaration of interest? Councillor Carter.
Thank you, as a council-appointed director of a council-owned company, HCF Property and Environment Limited, declaring a non-pecuniary interest.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Bryant. Sorry.
In accordance with Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1995, I will not be voting on agenda item 9D, the General Fund Budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Stratton.
I have non-pecuniary interest as well, the same as Councillor Carter.
Thank you. And Councillor Davis.
Yes, I'm the same today, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else that I have? No. Thank you. Moving on to item.
Sorry, Chair, I thought I would make my declaration when at the appropriate time, but apparently it's now. Declare a pecuniary interest as a director appointed by this council on Circle Housing.
Thank you.
Non-pecuniary.
Right, moving on to item 3, minutes of the last meeting, pages 3 to 14. To agree these minutes, anybody got anything to query? Yes, Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just minutes for the last full council on Crossrail 2. Would the Leader of the Council give an update to members on progress to put forward a submission to the consultation on Crossrail 2? And will he give an undertaking to members to share that submission on behalf of the council as soon as he can?
My apologies, submission has been made in consultation with local businesses by the Chief Executive. I'm under the impression that all members have seen sight of that, but I will absolutely make sure that a copy has is circulated.
Thank you, members. Anybody else wish to query anything in the minutes? Minutes are accepted then, thank you. Item 4, communications from the Chairman. Well, this is my first opportunity since Christmas to speak to you all in a lump, and just to say Happy New Year to everybody. And I hope you enjoyed the festive season. Since we last met as a councillor, I've attended just 6 events, predominantly involving schools. And this experience has only served to confirm what I think we already know, that our schools are making great strides forward, onward and upward, and the future looks bright. I have to apologise, though, for cancelling my civic dinner, which was earmarked for next Friday, the 12th, but just 30 responses would have meant a loss being made, so that had to be cancelled. However, this leaves me to focus on my choral concert at the Playhouse on Sunday the 17th of April, for which which you may order early bird discounted tickets at £8.50 from the Playhouse to hear me sing with the Three Valleys Male Voice Choir, the Henry Moore Children's Choir and the Calidus Ladies Choir, a total of around 100 voices, which should be quite entertaining. There is also a chance to sing at the annual civic service, where hopefully the participants in the service will be singing, not me. And that is on Sunday the 28th of this month at 11 a.m. at St. Peter's Church. You should also be on guard to watch out for the chairman's charity golf match, which I'm given to understand is on the 18th of March. So if any of you want to practice your swing, please let me know. Thank you. Moving on from that to petitions, item 5, petitions from the public. Do we have any petitions from the public? Is the petitioner here?
Yeah. In December, when it seemed that all was lost for the square, a friend and I set up a petition on change.org and submitted this one to the council. We wanted to ensure that the community found the square as a voice and that is acknowledged by the council. When it seemed as though all was lost 8 years ago, 4 musicians stepped in to take it on and keep it going as an independent resource without salary and with no thanks or recognition from the local authorities. At the time when virtually all youth provision in the town was being quietly phased out, the square remained. For all intents and purposes, it has been run ever since as a social enterprise, and I'm glad that this was recognised by some members of the council at the last Circle Housing proposal meeting. The change.org petition has currently got 2,857 signatures and almost as many comments. A safe place for people to go and be themselves no matter who they are, what they like or what they look like has been the common theme. One of the comments is from a Grammy Award winner who attributes his success to training at the Square. In December, Mark David wrote about the Square for the Huffington Post. He said that a lot of money had been spent in promoting the concept of Harlow as a sculpture town, but what it really should have been incredibly proud of is the Square. Last year, the Square became one of NME's top 10 small independent music venues. So why isn't the council proud of this? Why haven't they fought against its closure and to get it the best possible deal to continue its 50-year legacy in a new venue? This wouldn't be happening to the Playhouse. Why are we here in February with no place to go? That's what none of us understand. I wish you had been there in December when I saw the Bahikas, who I think will make it big this year, and I saw them in my local music venue supported by a college band who gave everyone cake after their set. You don't get that everywhere. I wish you had been there when Chaz and Dave played a sold-out show where people half my age and twice it were singing along side by side. I wish you had been there when local legends The Sweeney played one last show and like every other band that has gone on that stage in the past year said what a shame it was that the Square was just being let go and it has the best acoustics of most places that they played. I realised then that I would never be so close to brilliance again. I wish you had been there Christmas Eve when the house band played, and it's made up of the partners, staff and regulars of the Square. They played well-known Christmas songs like they have since they took the place on, and they were joined by Sam Ashford and his 6-year-old son. You don't get that everywhere. I wish you had been there New Year's Eve when a friend said that it felt like a wake, where you wanted to give one of your best friends the best send-off possible and do them proud. That's how we feel about that building. There were so many tears that night, and cheers to the bouncers who have become our friends and part of the Square's community. You don't get that everywhere. I understand that there was an offer for an extension on the lease, but it came as a result of delayed planning applications and in December, far too late to put in a programme for a business to run properly. We want the council to recognise what the Square brings to the town, the value it brings in visitors, culture and creativity. We want the council to think about future generations and for them to have that safe place to go and be themselves, no matter what that is, who that is, and to be creative and meet like-minded people. We want them to have the chance to play on a stage that's not in their school and to learn from their peers. Because the thing is, the Square is our playhouse.
Finish up now because your 3 minutes has expired.
I've got about 20 seconds, is that okay?
Okay.
The thing is, the Square is our playhouse, it is our town park, it is our Gibbard Garden, it is our sculpture town. It is just as important to us because it is the main point of our culture and community. It is Harlow for us. But you would fight for each of those. You wouldn't allow them to just go. You wouldn't get to after the fact for you to act. But you weren't there, and if you had been over the past 50 years, you would understand the magic of the place a bit more. You would have fought for us as though it was the playhouse to save it. We would have fought as though it was the playhouse, and we wouldn't be here in February, closed. The action that we request is for the best deals for the square to relocate.
Your time has expired. Thank you. Do members wish to debate this? Councillor Copeland?
It's done.
The protocol is to propose the civic response that's in the agenda papers on page 15.
Yeah, and I'll second that,
Look, I absolutely recognise that the role that the Square has played in the history of Harlow, in the provision for younger people, in promoting live music, in bringing on young and upcoming bands. We have been having an ongoing dialogue with the management of the Square building, and I am enormously sympathetic. What I can't do is make an open-ended commitment. We're about to have a special debate tonight about the budget and the massive savings that the council has to make. Unlike the Playhouse and other facilities in the town, the Square has never been funded or owned by the council. But having said that, I'll repeat, I am enormously sympathetic, and if the owners come forward with a specific ask of the council, it will be considered sympathetically and whether it is affordable for the council. I can't make a stronger commitment than that, although I will say absolutely that we have been having an ongoing dialogue. We've been as helpful as we possibly can in terms of helping the existing management of the Square to put together a business case that is sustainable and continues the enormously strong legacy that the Square has in Harlow. So I'm moving this particular motion, which is basically that the Chief Executive seeks further information around the financial viability, and that to determine if there's any offer of financial support when the Square management is clear about what it is asking for, and that will be brought before Cabinet. But I just want to repeat finally that we are actively working with the management of the Square. We've been as helpful as we possibly can in helping them shape a business case for a new venue in the town of Harlow to continue its great legacy.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Troll?
Thank you, Chair. The Square has been part of my life for a very long time, and it has got a very big place in my heart. It was somewhere, like many people in our town, when I was a young person and didn't always know where I fitted in. I found a group of friends, I found a place in my community. The Square isn't just a building, it has never been just a bar. It was always somewhere where it was a home and was a family to many people that needed it at that point. It's taught me a lot. I've stood on that stage, I've sung very badly. There's videos of it, unfortunately I can't quite destroy them all. You don't really know.
Shame on you.
Yeah. It gave me the opportunity to become who I was. It taught me confidence. It taught me skills. It wasn't just turning up and going out with my friends. It's like stop going out and causing trouble. Why are you not putting use to good? They taught me how to use video equipment, how to do shows, how to stage manage. There were so many skills there, and to do something constructive with my time. It gave me a purpose, and it also made me political. I will always remember when the Square was first up for a chop in 2008 when Essex County Council stopped funding. And probably even those on the Youth Council was the first time I really understood the devastating effect the local authority cuts could really have. And I was there and I helped organise the first fundraising night for the Greece night. And I'm very proud and that it did carry on, and that the management that took it on and the partners, they never planned to. It was never something that was in the plan, but they stepped in when the community needed them and said, we can't lose this.
Absolutely.
The Square, that building, was always going to have a limited life. I think the partners, anyone that goes there will know, as much as we might love it and it's much in all our heart, we know it needs a lot of work and it's not sustainable. The Square does need a new home. And the square needs to carry on in the community. It will always be in my heart, as in many's hearts, and I hope that we can continue to work constructively. I fought for the square back in the 2000s when it was up, and I stood there and protested outside, and I became political, and I realised that a difference you can make as a community. And I will continue to fight and work with the square to try and give it a place in our community, where it belongs, because I'm proud of Harlow. I'm proud of the people that come from that and the big names that have come through. And the local small business venues and small music venues that are closing across the country, the cultural effect that it's having. You're right, we do recognise the arts. We tend to recognise the fine and classical arts. We don't always recognise the contribution that many bands and many young people who find a way in music make to our industry, make to our country, and get known there out in the world on a world platform. And quite often that starts at places like the Square, a small place that's willing to give them a voice, that's willing to give them a chance, that's willing to give a 15-year-old that can't sing very well, but a platform on a stage to sing and sing what I wanted, like many others, and give us confidence to go on and do other things. And I really hope that this isn't a sad story, that this does end well, and I'll continue to make sure we fight, and I'll continue to work as best we can to try and solve what is an awful situation. And we are where we are, and I really hope that as a community we can come together, and that, as John said, the council is sympathetic and we'll play our part where we can as we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Toll. Does anybody else wish to speak? Yes. Councillor David.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing that I have to say might disappoint some people, but I won't be part in a trade-off of Harlow's cultural assets. It's not a matter of either or, but all. And I want to be part of a council that actually works for all of our cultural assets, with no exceptions. However, I have signed the Square's petition in recognition of the huge contribution that they have made to Harlow's youth and music. I will gladly support efforts to see that that legacy resonates in a new square building in Harlow and not just a footnote in the cultural history of the town. That would be a tragedy. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Klempner, do you wish to make a recommendation, or have you already done that?
Just to recommend the recommendation on page 15 of the Council agenda.
I second that, Chair.
Thank you. And to the vote? All in favour? Anybody against? No, that's unanimous. Thank you for your petition. Moving on, we have questions from the public. Mr. Pope.
I'll take question one as read. I do have a supplementary. So, with Prentice Place falling into disrepair, the car park opposite Rank House not being developed, the YMCA still left undeveloped, I cannot see how housing is a priority of this administration. Could the leader comment?
Well, as I said in the answer to your main question, we did have a significant aspiration for more council house building, as well as improving, further improving, following the over £100 million investment we made in meeting both the decent home standard and modernising council houses. But changes in government legislation and targeting social housing in particular, around enforcing rent changes, around how right to buy is going to be funded, have clearly made further capital investment very difficult. However, of the things that have been mentioned, I mean, the deals that have been done around the Prentice Place with the Harlow Health Centres Trust for Osler House and Lister House possibly means that we can now look forward to what can be done in terms of regenerating those. But we are in a very difficult climate, and we have to look very carefully about the viability of such schemes. I am hopeful that the Circle building, the old YMCA, will be put to appropriate use shortly. I'm aware that the planning application was refused. My understanding from that, principally on the complete lack of provision of social housing for a housing association. So we are continuing to do what we can, and we are exploring some other slightly more creative options for making sure that we continue to focus, which is the absolute focus of this administration, on making more and better housing provision.
Assure me that as Councillor Person is one of the invitees to Cabinet, this is not a backdoor way to introduce Cabinet deputy portfolio holders, as quite a few other councils have.
Yes, I can. I've been absolutely clear that we're not going to increase the size of the Cabinet and those holders of special responsibility allowances. So this, the role of member champion does not attract an allowance. And while I'm leader, I can't see the size of the Cabinet increasing.
Thank you for your questions, Mr. Harlow. Move on to item 7. Questions from councillors. We have none. Item 8. Motions from councillors. Councillor Beckett.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and fellow councillors, the subject of this motion is something I feel passionately about and could talk about for hours. I don't intend to. Today is National Time to Talk Day, a day when nearly every mental health agency, their clients, supporters and activists look to get the nation talking about mental health matters and to work to end misconceptions around some of the problems. Ultimately, I hope that the measures proposed in this motion will contribute to that aim in the fullness of time. It is a comprehensive motion that seeks to do what it says on the tin. It is a motion about mental health, and as such, it is as much about mental health solutions as it is about mental health problems. Moreover, it is an opportunity for Harlow Council to play a part in promoting and developing positive mental health and well-being for the people of this town, including our own employees. By signing up to the local authority's mental health challenge, set by England's major mental health charities, we will access knowledge about what support people need, how services can be improved, and how the delivery of better care often results in better value for money. In return for agreeing to mental health champions, those charities will provide us with support and resources to help us make the changes we may identify and make a real difference to our community. By signing up, we will join a list of nearly 70 other local authorities, including some familiar names: Essex County Council, East Herts, Cambridge, Hertfordshire, Broxbourne and St Albans. We will have the opportunity to learn and to share best practice through networking with such authorities. Rising to this challenge will benefit Harlow in many ways, and I know that we have people who will put in the necessary time and energy to drive those benefits home. Colleagues, I ask that you support this motion. Thank you.
Mr Chairman, I would like to thank Councillor Beckett for bringing this debate, especially today, the 4th of February, which is National Time to Talk Day, a day promoted by Mind and Rethink Mental Illness and financially supported by Comic Relief, the National Lottery and the Department of Health. The day has been designed to get a nation talking about mental health to help end misconceptions around it and to help get as many people as possible across England talking about mental health. Mental problems affect 1 in 4 people every year, yet too often are afraid to talk about their experiences because they fear it will affect their jobs or relationships. Indeed, nearly 9 out of 10 people who experience mental health problems say they face stigma and discrimination as a result. This can be even worse than the symptoms. That's not right, and it's why we all need to help break down the taboo of speaking about mental illness and end the stigma. Being a fan of history and a Tory at heart, when I first read this motion, my mind went directly to one of my political favourites and his fight with mental illness. During World War II, the hand of the tiller of the country was that of Sir Winston Churchill. Little did we know then sometimes just how shaky those hands were. For decades, Churchill had avoided standing too close to balconies and train platforms. I don't like standing near the edge of a platform when an express train is passing through. I like to stand back and, if possible, get a pillar between me and the train. I don't like to stand by the side of a ship and look down into the water. A second's action would end everything, a few drops of desperation. Churchill knew it and named it his black dog, following Samuel Johnson, who, like many great people, suffered from manic depression. Churchill was so paralysed by despair that he spent time in bed, had little energy, few interests, lost his appetite and couldn't concentrate. He was minimally functional. And this didn't just happen once or twice in the 30s, but also in the 20s and in 1910 and even earlier. These darker periods could last a few months, and then he'd come out of it and be his normal self. In an early letter to his wife Clementine in 1911, after hearing a friend's wife had received some help for depression from a German doctor, who wrote, "I think this man might be useful to me if my black dog returns. He seems quite away from me now. It is such a relief. All colours come back to me in the picture." But normal for Churchill was in a sense of also rather abnormal. When he wasn't severely depressed and low in energy and lying in bed, Churchill had very high energy levels. He wouldn't go to sleep until 2 or 3 in the morning, instead staying up, dictating his dozens of books. He would talk incessantly and an explosion of whirling thoughts. There are manic symptoms, part of the disease of manic depression, which includes, but not exactly the same thing as today's bipolar illness terminology. After some time, Churchill would go into months of not talking, not having any ideas, not having any energy, and then he'd be back up again. His mood swings were more than likely related to why Churchill drank so heavily, something that continues to many people who suffer mental illness today. In fact, the problems caused by and associated with mental ill health are the same as they were in Churchill's day: a greater incidence of alcohol and drug abuse, homelessness, employment problems and debt. What has changed, thank God, is that the world is becoming a place more open and willing to discuss and break down walls to enable us to talk about and discuss mental illness. So once again, I thank Mr. Bennett for bringing this, Councillor Bennett, for bringing this debate to, and may I encourage each and every one of you, not just to support this motion tonight, but to ensure you go from here and find time to talk to someone about mental health issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Toll, are you going to...
They both said it so well.
Thank you. We move to the vote. Yes, Ian, do you wish to... sorry, Councillor Beckett, to get your name correct.
Thank you for that, Chair. I welcome the slightly longer contribution from my colleague on the opposite benches. I was informed that brevity was required and tried to adhere to that. I'll just briefly say I welcome the comment. I think it's helpful to reflect upon those in history, such as Churchill, and also living icons such as Stephen Fry and Alistair Campbell. But if, as I hope this motion will be passed, I think that this town will be best served by going to the shopping centres of Old Harlow and Potter Street and Bush Fair and Staple Tie and talking to the butcher, the baker and the candlestick maker, because those are the people that this motion is aimed at. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move to the vote, I think. All in favour of the motion? I think that is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, references from Cabinet and committees. Do we have that? Item A, Councillor Holcombe.
Proposing that, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Strachan has seconded. Do we wish to move to the debate?
No.
No debate. Thank you. Move to the vote. 3. 3. Thank you. Moving on to item 9B, referrals from Cabinet, the corporate plan. Right the way through to item H.
I move those, Chair.
Thank you.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. Are you wish to speak now?
Yes, I'll make some brief sort of opening remarks. So this year's budget, like many other budgets in recent years, is characterised by significant cuts to government funding. This year we've had to save just over £1.1 million, but that's been the latest in a long series of cuts. Something like 65% reduction in the central government grant since 2011 and 12, and there is more to come. The basic position we have taken is, despite these massive cuts and significant uncertainty going forward, that uncertainty includes how the localisation of business rates is going to be treated, whether they're going to be equalised across the country, how that's going to impact on the revenue support grant, whether the revenue support grant is going to be cut before we get to retain business rates, and many other uncertainties, and often last-minute changes. So the local government final settlement added an extra £346,000 to the savings we had to make very late in the process. But we have sought to take a very prudent and sensible approach to create a sustainable budget and to maintain reserves at an appropriate level to meet the uncertainty going forward. Despite all those cuts and that uncertainty, we have, however, managed to maintain services, preserve jobs, invest an additional £400,000 in the regeneration fund to invest in regeneration of this town, and an investment in the discretionary services fund that safeguards well-done services like the Pest Corner and the public goods. I think it is important that we take a mature and sensible approach to budget planning. We look at sustainability not just for this year, but for years going forward. I'll leave my remark there and then I'll make the contribution later. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move a budget which takes into account the big issues and concerns that are facing the people of this town. Unlike the administration who talk about the cost of living and uncertainty and then stuff hard households with a 1.5 increase in their council tax bill year after year after year, and again this year, the Conservative group is doing its bit to help the hard-working people of this town with the cost of living yet again. So it's this party that puts forward a fully costed council tax freeze. Last year, the leader of the administration told this council he had sought agreement from Essex County Council to keep the street lights on. He used this as justification to raise the level of council tax. Despite continued assurances to the contrary, we later found out that no agreement had yet been finalised in May, yet he continued to charge the hard-working taxpayers of this town for the privilege of being kept in the dark. Now the lights are on, and we can see he has squirreled away the money into a little unknown fund called the Street Lighting Reserve. he and his administration have proposed to do nothing with it. We say this money was taken under false pretense and should be returned to the hard-working taxpayer from whom it was taken. Therefore, I'm able to tell you that for this year only, we are proposing this council rebate its council taxpayers the full £59,000 this administration took from them. That means that the council tax this year will be 2.5% higher under this administration than it would be under a Conservative one. We are able to propose this reduction in council tax while at the same time maintaining those much loved and needed frontline services. How has this been done? We have gone further than the administration in finding efficiencies in the following areas. As I mentioned last year, it may surprise many that the council spends many thousands of pounds on magazine subscriptions. We feel this is a luxury that the council can ill afford at this time, and so we are reducing that sum by £5,000. We would have reduced the chairman's allowance budget back to the 2013-14 level, saving a further £4,000. We're reducing our esteemed chief executive's budget by £2,000. We'll mothball the council's in-house reprographic service and finish the job that Labour still has so far unsuccessfully been able to do, and that is to move to a paperless council. This paper is my paper, by the way. They've been quick to deliver, quick to buy the latest gadgets, but they've been slow to deliver real reform. Reform in this area, we have shown, would net this council a gross saving of over £90,000. As we proposed last year, we would continue to work with the Rotary Group to raise funds for the upkeep of this town's local environment. Then as now, we conservatively estimate this would generate an additional £6,000 of income in this area. I say we conservatively estimate, could be more. We also propose that members of this council also tighten their belts, and so we propose a 5% cut to members' allowances and a further reduction to the overall member services budget, which would net this council a further £11,326. In total, Mr Chairman, we have identified approximately £280,000 worth of savings, in addition to those of the administration, without affecting a single frontline service. All these savings have been agreed as being legal by the administration's Section 151 officer. The administration would have you believe that government cuts to spending will affect frontline services and everything is doom and gloom. This is how they keep people under their boot. With our budget, we have shown that this is not the case. We propose, for the savings we have found, to reverse the draconian and scandalous measure to charge for nappy and incontinence waste services that this administration has callously introduced and does not consider, referred to tonight, a frontline service. Under this council, human waste will be left to fester for 2 weeks in people's bins outside their homes, outside their neighbours' homes. This is unsanitary, undignified and unnecessary. When they were in opposition, they campaigned vociferously against fortnightly collection of smelly food waste, but now they propose fortnightly collection of human waste. Labour say one thing and then do another. We have found the savings to prevent this from happening. They have not. The advice we received when we were in administration was any increase in bulky waste charges would lead to excess of fly tipping. We agreed, as did the then Labour Party. But now they propose a 43% hike in the charge and now conveniently forget any previous advice given. Labour say one thing and then do another. Labour claims to be the party of the local community, but they have failed to budget for what will be a nationwide celebration of Her Majesty the Queen's 90th birthday. We have proposed a sum in our budget to allow a town-wide celebration, free to residents, fireworks and music in the town park, and the opportunity for people to come together and have street parties. Under this administration, while the rest of the nation celebrates, Harlow residents will be left out. We have also set aside a sum to commemorate the centenary of the Battle of the Somme, to pay respect to those, to pay respect to those who have sacrificed themselves so that we may have a better and free life. We have even set aside £20,000 to improve playgrounds and parks. Mr Chairman, in summing up, the choice for the electorate this May is clear. Vote Conservative for a 2.5% cut in council tax. Vote Conservative if you wish to see investment in our local parks and playgrounds. Vote Conservative if you want to see a clean town not blighted by fly-tipped rubbish. Vote Conservative if you believe in dignity in old age, caring for the sick and vulnerable, and helping the young by ensuring human waste is not disposable. Vote Conservative if you want a positive and bright outlook with no cuts to frontline services, and you want to participate and join with the nation in celebrating our Sovereign's 90th birthday. Vote Conservative if you believe we should respect the fallen by commemorating the centenary of the Battle of the Somme. Mr. Chairman, vote Conservative.
Yes. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Toll.
I don't think I need to say much after that. I think you've just pretty much said what I was going to say. This is an amendment that's for a political campaign. You're obsessed with the May elections and wanting to win seats instead of the long-term sustainable future of Harlow, our community. I'm quite proud of the things that we've done since 2012, and I believe we do that and will continue to do that by providing a clear vision for a sustainable Harlow that works for its community and works for all of its community, not a short-term amendment of to make a political statement for a leaflet. That's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm a councillor. I'm here to serve my residents. And what you've said is just simply some of it not correct. And it's short term, it's looking at it. The removal, for example, of the youth and citizenship subscriptions from my portfolio. It's not magazine subscriptions, as I'm sure when you spoke to your officers is not. It's money that's being left from neighbourhood forums and for running things. And as we're going through currently a customer service review and how we're gauging our community, I don't want to go ahead of that in March and take away money that we may be using and what we're going to do to engage our residents, I think is entirely important. The streetlights, I think that's a huge success. Thank you for bringing that up. Because the Tories at County Hall were the ones that stood in the way last April to not let us turn them on. The Cabinet member who finally signed it was abstained or wasn't in any of the debates here at Harlow Council when we debated it. And from what I heard, didn't actually want to sign it to begin with, but obviously then took credit afterwards. But we did do the right thing. We didn't just do it for a May election, we continued the fight after May. We continued to do what was right for Harlow, for the safety of women, for the safety of night workers, for the safety of many, and what is right, and we got those streetlights turned back on, and I'm very proud of that. None of this would have happened if we accept your year-on-year amendment, which is short-term and going to be short-lived. So I really hope you don't get a chance to set a real budget next year, and I look forward to talking down your amendment.
The phrasing for our amendment is a budget for the workers. I've actually got it written down on my piece of paper here. Oh, you may smirk and snigger. I wonder why. It's not just a council tax free, because as you've heard, it's a council tax cut. A reduction in tax. Something we know is such an alien concept. The members of the opposite. And there is the reduction in rent. Yes, a real benefit to the majority of our tenants who actually pay rent. Tenants who have faced decades of above inflation rent rises. Now there's some fairness from a Conservative government. It's absolutely amazing that there is barely a mention of the benefit to tenants in the papers before us tonight. Tenants will be better off, on average, by almost £1 a week, money back in their pockets. You would think, as we've already heard, that the reduction, the reduction is the end of social housing as we know it. Yet the council has been able to bring all its homes up to decent home standards. Tenants who live in hard-to-heat properties have had external insulation, and tenants in flats have had new safety systems installed, all thanks to the HRA reforms introduced by a Conservative-led coalition. And there will still be enough money going forward to maintain properties to the required standard. Now, I'm sure I'll be hearing shortly that you won't be able to build council houses anymore. I did take the opportunity last week at Cabinet of saying that there are alternative, a different way of providing council houses, and whether this council has been in contact with the Institute of Housing Finance. Mr. Chairman, our general fund alternative shows what can be done with a bit of imagination and hard work. An alternative that the Conservatives produce year on year, because we care. We care about the residents, we care about the taxpayers, we care about the tenants. We care about the town to make it a better place in which to live and to work and to rest. And we care about the council to enable it to provide the services people need, want and can afford. But what do we hear from the opposite, from the administration? Doom and gloom, your favourite expression. For example, paragraph 26 of the General Fund report says, due to the continuing economic downturn. Economic downturn?
As usual.
Nationally, there are more people in employment since records began.
0-hour contract.
In Harlow, the number of claiming job seekers allowance has fallen by 57% since 2010. Average wages are up by 2% this year compared with almost flat inflation. Since 2010, almost 3/4 of the growth in employment has been in full-time jobs. And the proportion of people on 0-hour contracts, Councillor Foreman, would you like to inform us?
There's more 0-hour contract. You go and talk to the people who work 0-hour contract.
2.4%.
That's a lot. Shouldn't be any.
Questions, please. Questions, please, should be directed to the relevant officer. Brilliant councillors.
Where is the imagination and hard work from the members opposite? Isn't it funny how our budgets get voted down every year and then pop up the following year in the administration budget?
Yeah.
We also understand the phrase community leadership. As well as restoring the weekly incontinent waste collections, there are two examples of how a good council leads. One is by recognising Her Majesty the Queen's 90th birthday and helping our residents to celebrate it. Harlow is one of the few councils in Essex not to be leading on this. And the second is an extension of the remembrance of the centenary of the First World War. The 1st of July this year is the anniversary of the start of the Battle of the Somme. It's the bloodiest day in our military history, when 2 local soldiers gave their lives. This council has led an amazing group of people who have already organised some notable achievements as part of the national remembrance. And we want them to be able to continue their work, ensuring we never forget.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our budget complements 3 of the most important objectives that any council should achieve. Good quality frontline services, a council more able to respond to modern demands, and a priority on local economic growth. This is a budget for the workers in this town because we're freezing council tax, delivering a rebate, and no change to frontline services. We all know that in the next few years, it will be a game-changing moment for this town. Harlow wants leaders committed to finding the best value for their residents' council tax contributions. So we have put forward the community at the heart of our budget by recognising those brave servicemen from Harlow who lost their lives during the Battle of the Somme, and celebrating Her Majesty's 90th birthday and investing money to improve the town's playgrounds. And I also welcome the fact that Churchgate Street is putting on a 90th celebration for Her Majesty, leading before the council even does anything. Our budget is also good news for Harlow's environment, protecting weekly connections and keeping the cost of bulky collections low. Residents opposed historically fortnightly collections and any type of waste that is left for 2 weeks. I'm also deeply concerned, as has been raised, about the fact that bulky collection, the costs are going up and we could be threatened by excess fly tipping across the town. A Conservative-run Harlow Council will also be lean. We've set out that this year we could find £300,000 worth of savings to make this council work better and smarter for our town. What we're doing is putting hard-working taxpayers first. They deserve a council that is efficient and agile to meet the constant demands that it faces from modern-day residents. Our budget is all about preparing the council for a modern world, moving away from the old forms of print communication, embracing technology and its capability to save money, officer time, improve openness and accessibility of Harlow Council services by a move on reprographics. We're also protecting frontline services and continuing to put regeneration at the heart of our plan to grow our local economy. Our budget does not alter the commitments on regeneration. This funding is vital if we're going to build a community ready and able to make a major influence in the East of England corridor. All of these things, of course, depend on a strong and growing local economy, supported by a competent national government. And we are lucky to have Robert Halfon, our Member of Parliament, who is a Cabinet Minister, forwarding through the Cabinet Office principles of liberating councils from devolution, granting additional powers to help develop the local economies through business rates. Now is the time, in my view, to seize the initiative. The Harlow Enterprise Zone will lift Harlow and create an opportunity for this town to wield great influence across Essex. I welcome the opportunity to support my colleague Councillor Perry tonight. Our budget, signed off by officers as balanced, has shown that we, through a positive vision for Harlow, can translate that into budget proposals for working people. This opposition has set the foundations for a council that looks better after its residents, neighbourhoods, businesses and community organisations that form the backbone of our town.
Councillor Tryon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Councillor Carter is absolutely correct that self-financing has been a good thing for Harlow. It's been very positive. May I remind him that it was actually John Healey, who was the outgoing Labour Minister for Housing, who started the ball rolling with self-financing, and it was quite rightly continued by the coalition government. What we've had recently is a 1% rent cut, and for individual tenants, of course, that is a very positive thing. But you cannot make public policy on the hoof from a political chancellor, as has happened recently. What this means is that we have to change our asset management strategy. We have to cut back on some of the works that had been planned previously. But what is the biggest scandal is that it's going to mean less homes. We are not able to build homes in the next cycle, which we were hoping to do. So it's actually a bad thing to make policy on the hoof like this. We need sensible public policy from a Secretary of State for Housing. We need it to be a bigger position. We need a government that takes it seriously. Estimates suggest that there's going to be 88,000 less council homes by 2020. What that means, of course, is that you're going to have more people into private rented accommodation that is poor quality with higher rent. So I will speak more in the main debate, but I just wanted to correct Councillor Carter on those 2 points.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wasn't actually going to speak at this particular issue, but I just thought I would take up the challenge of Councillor Carter that some people do not look at Harlow in the glum, but actually we do look at it in a very positive way. And I think we all need to remind ourselves of the huge successes that we have achieved under this Labour administration. We've got new council houses for the first time in 25 years. We may never see any more new council houses in the next 25 due to the draconian decisions made by the Tory government. We're seeing new growth and new opportunities has been realised through the hard work and dedication of our team of experts and our officers throughout the town and working with different partners. We've seen some real growth and real opportunity both in housing and other areas. We got the lights back on and we also resolved the issue about the gypsy travellers. These are all good, positive stories that shows that this administration, under a Labour leadership, is getting on with the job and achieving. We also then have to look at the legacy. Well, at the moment we're dealing with the town centre, and because my good colleague Councillor Perrin mentioned it, I cannot take the opportunity without mentioning the famous red pots in Market Square that now contains 15 dead trees because he chose the wrong trees that we're now having to put back. That was a Tory administration that took place. We heard a very passionate and fantastic debate about the square. Who closed the square in the first place? It was a Tory Essex County Council who withdrew the money from that and it's only because of the goodwill and the passion of several people who rescued that, and that's why we want to work with them to try to find those resolutions. And they're talking about a zero option for an increase. Let's look at what the Tory-run Essex County Council is going to be announcing at the end of this week. Will that be a 0, or will it be 1, 2, 3, or possibly 4% increase, which will be a massive burden on our population wherever you live and wherever you do. We also have to look at the risks that we face under this Tory government. Circle Anglia changed their planning and therefore damaged the plans for the square directly as a result of what the government was doing about social housing and housing associations. Those are the real consequences of a government that doesn't listen and it doesn't care. We're also having a debate later on in the year about the future and the concerns about Princess Alexandra and what can we do about health provision. And all the way through we've seen service cuts. But to my portfolio, which is only mentioned once, which is my good favourite roundabouts, last year they did the same and they suggested that the Rotary Club would take over and somehow the Rotary Club are going to give us £6,000. Can I absolutely assure him that when we spoke to the Rotary Club, what they wanted to do is to take over the management, the sponsorship and the delivery of the sponsorship for those. Any monies that was raised would not come to the council, but would be for named charities. I was interested in that concept, and I was asking, could we be part of the process of choosing local named charities? And we were told by the Rotary Club, no, it will be for them to choose the charities, and that therefore that was not a localism particular issue. We also asked whether or not, because they were roundabout, whether or not the money could be used for green charities, and we were absolutely told again, the answer is no. So this idea of getting £6,000 as profit out of the Rotary Club, frankly, is a nonsense. It was a nonsense last year, and it's a nonsense this year. So finally, what I would say is that Harlow should not look back in anger. What we should be doing is looking at hope, aspiration and community values. We are on solid foundation. This is our budget. It's realistic, it's fair and it's appropriate, and it's for Harlow to choose whether or not they want to follow the path of aspiration and support under a Labour administration, or do what the others are saying, which is cuts, clawbacks and pay for the private service. I know what most people in this community want. They want a safe community, a lighter community, a Harlow community, and a good council run by a Labour administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Local government finances in chaos. David Cameron went to Oxford County Council and protested about library closures in his constituencies, and the Conservative leader of Oxford County Council told him about the cuts to local government. The leader of Sussex County Council only this week has actually complained vocally to the government about the massive cuts that Sussex is suffering. The Conservative leader of Essex County Council has actually been quoted on BBC Essex Radio as talking about the reservoir drained dry in very terms. Harlow Council will actually be, to maintain these services, be charging taxpayers 10 pence a week. The Conservative-controlled police authority will actually be doing something similar and putting its council tax up. The fire authority in Wednesday week, I believe, dominated by Conservatives, under 25 members, will be putting its council tax up by 2%. The County Council, who hasn't even been able to publish its financial details and will publish them tomorrow on Tuesday, is likely to actually, as Tony said, because we don't know as county councillors, as opposition members yet, they haven't had the gall to actually publish the figure of anything up to 4%. The Conservative government will penalise, this isn't in Councillor Perrin's budget, the Conservative Council will penalise local authorities who do not actually put their council tax up. Money will be taken away next year, even in more grant, let alone the grant that they're taking away. There'll be even more grant taken away if the council tax is not raised this year. That is a Conservative government. And as for the workers, Councillor Simon Coates, well, what working class households who are earning over £30,000 a year are going to be very pleased to see their rents almost doubled with the legislation that's actually going through Parliament. What workers are actually looking forward to actually seeing their rents double? And that's a large proportion of our tenants. That's not one income, that's a joint income for the household. It's £30,000 for England and £40,000 in London. We're already seeing people having to leave London because they simply cannot afford the housing. And what's the other attack? The other attack is on the discretionary fund. Since we came in, we've had to actually protect the things that the Conservatives were going to phase out. The playhouse, the paddling pools, Pets Corner and so on. We've actually set up a discretionary fund to actually make sure that that's actually financed until 2020. Now money is going to be taken out of the discretionary fund and those facilities are actually going to be cut back. So at the end of the day, Chairperson, I don't think we can actually vote for this amendment.
Councillor Johnson. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start my entry into this debate by thanking the officers from the finance team and others that have contributed to both the work that's gone into the administration's budget and into the opposition's budget amendment tonight. We have a very good officer corps in this town. Local government is not always so blessed, and I feel we should say thanks where thanks is due. So thank you to those officers for your help and all your hard work that has gone into making tonight possible. That being said, Mr. Chairman, we're meant to be debating at this moment in time the opposition budget. What we've heard from contributions from the other side is a lot of spin and bluster to try and take away the attention from what we're actually debating. The speeches from Councillor Durkin and Councillor Danvers could easily have been on their own budget, not on the amendment. And just to put Councillor Danvers right, you did not create the fund that you call the Discretionary Services Fund. We created the Big Society Fund. Using that funding stream, you simply renamed it the Discretionary Services Fund because you didn't like the term Big Society. To claim that you created that fund and you created the idea to fund those items that you said we were planning to close, which we were not, is a pure lie, and I would ask you to withdraw it. So, Mr. Chairman, turning to the purpose of this part of the debate, the opposition amendment, I want to talk about some of the things that are in here. Firstly, a council tax freeze. It seems to me that the administration think it's always natural that council tax must be put up. And that it's good to put council tax up, except when a Tory council somewhere else is doing it. Then it's very, very bad to put council tax up, and they'll tell you that. But for them to put council tax up, it's all right. I don't believe that is. I believe we talked about a workers' budget, and you want to claim that you're the party of the workers, and our MP is saying that we're the party of the workers. I want to be interested in the workers in Harlow. The workers in Harlow have told me when I've been around knocking on doors, and we've knocked on a lot of doors, and they've told us they don't want to see tax rises. Now, I can't personally do anything about the tax rises in other councils. I can't do anything about Nick Alston and his police authority. I can't stand Nick Alston. He's not a Conservative as far as I'm concerned. And the police precinct. Frankly, I can't do anything about Essex County Council and what they decide to do. What I can do is have a bearing on Harlow District Council. That's the area that I'm elected for, and that's the area that I fight for. And the people in the streets of Harlow tell me they don't want to see a council tax rise. So that's why Harlow Conservatives continually move council tax freezes. We continually find the savings. We've got one better this year. We want to give a rebate. We want to give that money that you over-collected for lights And we can have the discussion about how long it took to get the lights on, and you can throw criticisms at Eddie here, but I can tell you that within 48 hours of him taking the cabinet position at County Hall, he'd signed off the turning on of the lights in Harlow. You can't get any better than that. But what you did was collect money that you couldn't pay for anything with. You over-collected money. So all you want to do is give that back to the council taxpayer of Harlow. That's fairly simple. If you are overcharged by your energy company and you didn't use that much energy, you get that money back. It's the same principle. I want to move on to a couple of other things because it's about a matter of trust when you're in local politics. And when we introduced the weekly bin collection system with the wheelie bins, you guys were absolutely horrified about this. You wanted to stay on black sacks, and a number of you were on record as saying you wanted those black sacks still in the town. Personally, I think wheelie bins was the right way to go, and it's worked. It's increased our recycling rate, and it's made people think about what they're throwing away. But one of the things we promised as an administration back then was you would never have to have smelly waste in your bin for more than 1 week. And because of that, we introduced a special napkin incontinence service. Now, yes, it may be used by a limited number of people, 300 people at any one time. But I can tell you, in the course of 7 years of a contract, people that were wearing nappies 7 years ago aren't wearing them now. It's different people that are using that service. That service has been used by a number of people. And what the Labour Party have done tonight, are trying to do tonight in their budget that we want to reverse, is to say we don't care about you. We're the Labour Party that doesn't care whether you have smelly waste and nappies in your bin over the summer, stinking the town out. But as a Conservative, and as a Conservative that stood and promised we wouldn't let smelly waste be in bins for 2 weeks, I have to move an amendment to that. As to things like the Queen's 90th birthday and Battle of the Somme, as a council, we're a community leader, and we should be putting a few pounds aside to celebrate those things and to make those things happen. And we can only do that because Harlow Conservatives have found lots of savings here. There were tons more savings to find, and I don't think the administration's gone far enough. And one of the things they'll say is, your budget's not sustainable. I've not moved the budget for 4 or 5 years because I'm afraid of them pinching our ideas. And actually I'm very afraid of them pinching our ideas because 2 years ago we said let's increase car parking income, they said you can't do it. We said let's cut members' allowances, they said you can't do it. We said let's give a first hour car parking free in local car parks, they said oh no, no, no. And last year's budget, they included all of those things. So this year, when I opened the budget book, and I saw that last year we suggested reducing government subscriptions for a few £1,000, guess what they've done? They've done it. Last year we suggested a £50,000 travellers contingency fund, and they said it wasn't needed. But guess what? In this year's budget, it's there. Last year we suggested reducing severance contributions to the severance reserve by £50,000 a year, and they said that's not necessary, you don't do that, your budget doesn't balance. But guess what? They're doing it this year. So frankly, Mr. Chairman, I won't take any rubbish from the Leader of the Council about not putting a sustainable budget up and giving them ideas for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years. What I will do though is keep coming back every year and saying you could have done better. You didn't have to tax the people of Harlow more, and that's why I'm seconding an opposition budget that gives a rebate to the council tenants and taxpayers of this town and puts back services that you are cutting.
Right, so Councillor Johnson said let's focus on his budget, so let's do that. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go a line-by-line critique of everyone, so I'll focus on some of the big numbers in your budget. And you're absolutely right, I am going to maintain and demonstrate that your budget is not sustainable, that once again you've taken short-term decisions, maybe for a political leaflet or for electoral gain, but I'm interested in a sustainable budget that keeps these council finances delivering the services that local residents want and value into the future. So let's start at the top. Head of Community Services, which we're proposing moving out of the Discretionary Services Fund back into the General Fund. They propose leaving it there, saving the General Fund £94,000. Now what's the impact of that? Well, 2 impacts of that. One is that it's now on a fixed term contract, so that the funding for that will run out in 2018-19. Secondly, it will ensure that the Discretionary Services Fund, the thing that funds the playhouse, Pets Corner, the paddling pools, amongst other things, will be in deficit by the end of 2018 and 19, rather than have the headroom that is required to look after these services going forward. And they may have started the big society fund, but when we took over the administration, we only had 1 year's funding in that fund for things like the playhouse. And the first things that we did was make sure that there was a 3-year funding stream, so we had the time to look at alternative service provision. So the second item, street lighting reserve. So absolutely, the opposition wanted to throw the towel in as soon as Essex County Council said no. And unfortunately, I'm not like that. It shows some tenacity to have the negotiations. And the coincidence that Councillor Eddie Johnson was appointed 2 days before, he knows very well, he was looking a little embarrassed when you said that, Andrew, that the agreement had been reached between myself and the leader of Essex County Council before that time, but shows some tenacity. Now, absolutely that took longer than it should have done. But what we've done with that £59,000 is to put it in a reserve to ensure that we get a sustainable deal. And the reason why Harlow Council is the only council in Essex that had its lights on is because we did a 4-year deal with Essex County Council. And as part of that, this money is then going to be used to offset any increases in future electricity prices, so we continue that sustainable deal. The third thing we're talking about, reprographics. They talk about savings. Absolutely, I've been working with officers over quite a considerable time looking at that. But your solution is to just do a raid on reserves of £104,460 at a time when government finances is increasing in uncertainties. And so what we're doing is making sure that we can have the sustainability in the budget. Now, in terms of the savings, the council tax freeze, I would absolutely like to keep council tax rises as low as is possible, sensible and sustainable. Absolutely. If we'd have frozen the council tax like you propose every year, right now, instead of the £1.1 million we'd have to save, we would now have to be saving an additional £390,000 on top of that, plus the £90,000 that they're proposing to save. And that's taking into account all the freeze grants as they went in and out. And the other thing, if any of the opposition had read their own government's local government finance settlement about the complete reversal in policy, instead of providing grants to freeze council tax, they're now going to penalise councils who don't raise council tax. So this is absolutely about sustainability. We've got a sustainable budget, and every single item, the big ticket items, I could go on with all the remaining detail about why these things are good, bad or indifferent. But this is the fundamental thing. It's not got a sustainable budget, and that's why we'll be opposing it.
Thank you. So we come to the vote on the amended budget. All those in favour? All those against? The amendment is lost. We move to the substantive, I'm just trying to think of the word, the substantive budget. The substantive budget, all those in... I'm just looking at the clock. Councillor Perrin was first up with his hand up.
I just wanted to ask a question rather than into the debate at the moment, Mr. Chairman. Understanding orders 11.2 on reports to Cabinet.
Please go ahead.
I have a question for the portfolio holder for finance. Could he, resources, sorry. Could he please tell me if the £600,000 that it has cost
it does say that you should really give the Chief Executive notice of the question before the start of the meeting.
Absolutely. The Chairman.
No, it doesn't. If the question relates to urgent matters, they have the consent of the Chairman of the meeting where the question is to be put, and the content of the question is given to the Chief Executive before the start of the relevant meeting.
There you go. You can't make your own rules.
This is the copy that you've given me. It's got my name on it, and it doesn't say that at all, Mr. Chairman.
So that level
They make their own rules as they go along. They make their own rules as they go along.
Councillor, I will allow the question, but I think the person questioned has something to say.
If it works, yes. All I can say at this stage, Chair, is that that's the amount of money. There are pension contributions that are spread over 18 years. But if I had notice of the question, as I had with Andrew Johnson and Simon Carter at the Cabinet meeting, I promised a reply, and I believe both of them have had that reply. I will make sure that Russell gets a reply, a full reply, on this particular item, Chair.
Thank you. We'll move to the substantive motion now.
That's probably one that you can chair.
I think we'll knock that on the head. Because the Chief Executive has not had notice of the question.
Yeah, so don't push it.
Which I think is the point that we're all agreed on whether or not...
Mr Chairman, either that is the copy or a copy that Councillor Johnson's got. We can't have two copies going
I think both mentioned the notice to the chair.
No, they don't. That's the thing that we're mentioning.
I didn't see your copy.
Move on, Chair.
Stand to one of you, move on, Chair.
As I understand it from the head of governance, your standing order is outdated.
Yeah, all I
would say, Mr. Chairman, we're all laughing and joking here, but I find it rather odd that in a democratic forum it's laughed at that somebody would want to ask a question. That's all.
We're laughing at you because you put it in the wrong place.
as long as you follow the rule.
Well, I have no control over people's sense of humour. We're back to the substantive motion.
I waited to the challenge of no one was going to speak, so obviously I'm the only speaker here, Chair. Thank you very much. First of all, before I start speaking, I'd like to place on record my personal thanks for the officers that worked so hard with me this year on my particular portfolio and helping me in my 1001 questions and putting some of our proposals together. And I don't know really where to start tonight. I did have a little bit of a starting order, but then Councillor Perrin's taken that away from me, because I'd like to give him some quotes. Vote Conservative to stop flighted rubbish. Ignore previous advice. But last but not least, the one I love the most, and I want you all to keep this in mind, the public and press, say one thing and do another. Please keep that in your mind. Say one thing and do another. I've been doing some work in the last few weeks, following last week's Cabinet meeting and several questions I had regarding the proposal that we're making, particularly in my area. And I went back in history and I looked at the years 2008 to 2012, commonly known as the 4-year ill-fated rule of the Conservative Group. Okay? And let's have a look and say one thing and do another. We have been attacked as an administration, and last week was at a Cabinet as well, about a £4.50 increase in bulky waste collection. Let's have a look. 2010 to 2011, an increase of £11.75. So if £4.50 is utter rubbish and a disgrace, I've got to think of a word now that's 3 times stronger than that, because that's 3 times stronger than the amount they put it up when they was in charge, okay? Not content with that, 2 years later, 2012, setting the 2012-13 budget, they put bulky waste collections up again.
It's now gone up to £12. Okay, say one thing and do another. Let's look at 2013-14 under the Labour administration. Items went down to £10, actually decreased the amount that people had to pay by £2. Councillor Johnson last week asked me several questions, one of about the link between putting up the cost of bulky waste and the amount of fly tipping in the town. And I tried to assure him there's no link. Well, let's now put some more facts to that as well. When his group and his party put up bulky waste collections, actually fly tipping reports went down 236 times the following year. Over their 4-year ill-fated term of office, when they put up the colossal amount up from to £12 increase in bulky waste, on average we had 330 less reports of fly tipping. So there factually is no link between increasing bulky waste and fly tipping. So if you vote Conservative to stop fly tipping rubbish, that is rubbish. Okay? Absolutely infactual and incorrect again. Then I looked at the ill-fated 4-year term again on their green and environmental credentials. Okay? Let's have a look at what they introduced during their 4-year terms of office. In year 1, £45,000 was taken out of the budget towards the cost of ground maintenance. The following year, they took £25,000 away from grass cutting, shrub maintenance reduction and the street scene cleaning. They took £32,000 away from decreasing the labour that delivers those services. Followed that up within a year, and I've absolutely kind of come to the conclusion where we've got all the tree problems for in this town. We have tremendous issues at the moment with trees. They took £75,000 away from expenditure on maintenance and protective tree programmes. Okay, this is Councillor Johnson and his group's credentials on the environment and green scene in this town. Councillor Johnson asked me last week at Cabinet again that would I give him a guarantee that fly tipping wouldn't increase? And of course, I have to be honest, of course I cannot give that guarantee. What I will say though, is factual. If you have seen in the local press and media a few weeks ago, reports about enforcement that this administration takes very seriously about fly tipping. There was 3 instances only a few weeks ago. We will remain to be extra vigilant on enforcement and fly tipping. It's taken extremely seriously and our track record proves it. Okay? But let's look, I've just spoken about how much they value the environment, how much they value the green scene in this town. Let's look at what we've done in the last 2 years. Through the negotiations of the Kia contracts, we've actually increased spending in this area by £531,000 over the next 3 years. We're cutting the grass more than we've ever done before, and we've put more money in shrub reduction and landscaping across the town. Only today, the leader of the council forwarded me an email from a resident who over the years has been fairly critical of the town and the litter and the cleanliness and the landscaping, commenting on how much he's found it's been improved over the last couple of years. I intend the environmental SIP meetings with a lot of interested people across this town who take a great interest and voluntary interest in the environment, and they recognise the improvements that have been made in the last couple of years. So, going back to guarantees that Councillor Johnson wanted last week, I cannot guarantee him that won't be no more fly tipping. I'm pretty certain there won't be. I cannot guarantee that the grass is not going to grow again next year, but I think it actually might. You know, we're obviously dealing with that. What I'd like is a guarantee from him that his government and his MP are going to stop voting against massive reductions in council saving and putting extremely important services to this town, extremely important services to our residents at risk just by going after local authorities year after year. We've already heard that 65% decrease since 2010 to our funding. We've had to make some important decisions. And I'll return to nappy collections, that's one thing they should. And I'll say some facts, then I'll talk about the reality. Through statistics, 90% of people that have young children in this town do not use this service. They put it in a black waste bin. I speak to many people across the town. Actually, I only found one on a doorstep that does use the service. And, you know, it's quite a unique service. We're the only council council in Essex that actually provide this service, so it's quite a unique service. But it may sound to all of you that I'm trying to defend putting up local waste, that I'm trying to defend not stopping the nappy collections. I don't take any pride. I didn't take any pride in going to my group and making those proposals. I didn't take any pride in that whatsoever. I didn't come into politics in this town, in a town that I was born in 50 odd years ago, to do stuff like that. It's not what I'm about. It's not what the Labour group is about. But because of the strain that your government has put on this town, I'd much rather protect the real frontline services. I'd much rather protect jobs across this town. There's no one actually spoken about jobs. This is now the second or third year on the trot that this group has put forward a proposal that has protected every single job in this council. We value all the council workers, we value our officers, unlike the group opposite. So, just to recap.
Councillor, not recap.
Sorry, sum up. Sum up is the right word. You're not the only one get the wrong words out tonight, Chair. We have taken over from an administration, their 4-year of absolute disaster. Well, they left us 1 year's worth of funding for the playhouse. They left us 1 year's worth of funding for Pet's Corner. They left us 1 year's funding for the paddling pools. Here we are 3 years later with those services still protected. That's what we do. So let's go back to where we started, shall we? Say one thing and do another. I think it's vote Conservative, you'll never be trusted again. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this must be the first budget meeting I've attended in 4 years, and I care to remember, where the leader of the council has not actually stood up to introduce their budget and to explain how it's all going to work. And, you know, that's probably why there was a fair bit of hesitation, because we were waiting for someone to actually talk us through it next door virtues and so forth. However, I was surprised to discover that the opening of this year's corporate plan did not begin with "Workers of the World Unite." As you'll all recognise, they are the closing words of the Communist Manifesto, which I'm sure you recite every morning to steel yourselves for the day ahead. How much more can we spend? How much more can we tax? How much more can we control? The corporate plan is full of priorities, exhortations to improve the lives of everyone, and to spend and spend and spend. Under the Communist Manifesto, the workers own the means of production, and under this administration, the means of delivery are being brought back under direct control. But how much has been spent on the local authority trading company already? And how much more is to be spent this year? There's been £500,000 from the HRA in the current year. In this budget, there is £250,000 to be lifted from the Investor Save Reserve, plus another £350,000 from the New Homes Bonus. Over £1 million even before it starts trading. Well, at least the money should be paid back to the Investor Save Reserve, or will it? When I tried to discover a payment plan last week, all I got were vague promises of future profits. But how many times, Mr. Chairman, are these profits to be spent? To recover the losses in the first few years of operation? To invest in new and additional services? To reduce the shortfall on the general fund? And to repay the reserve? Oh boy, what a wonderful life it must be on planet Corbyn. Money trees, left, right and centre. Well, on the left anyway. And of course we get the usual scaremongering about housing reforms. In his report, the Housing Portfolio Holder lists a number of changes which will adversely affect the sustainability of the HRA, paragraph 2. For example, the 10 million potential impact on the sale of high-value properties, paragraph 3. The Council estimates that it has 64 such properties. So he's suggesting that half that number will become void this year, and the remainder next year. But he gives no evidence as to how often these properties actually come up. Or the impact of pay to stay, where higher earners will pay higher rent on a phased basis, not doubled their £30,000 income. And the council retains the base rent. And this doesn't start until 2017-18. But again, there's no explanation as to what the impact will be on the HRA. Mr. Chairman, we announced our amendment as a budget for workers. The budget from this increasingly left-wing council, helpfully confirmed in Cabinet last week by Councillor Purton, is mean and nasty, attacking the vulnerable instead of helping them, reducing the frequency of nappy collection. At Cabinet last week, we were staggered that there had been no consultation with the users over this change. You just don't care. And the redecoration service for disabled and elderly tenants, redecorating a couple of rooms or the stairs, has been abolished. A saving of a paltry £4,000 out of a budget of £52 million. When we were reviewing our alternative budget, we suggested taking this minor sum out of the discretionary services fund. But we were told that the ESF can't be used for HRA expenditure. Actually, it's not HRA expenditure, it is discretionary. Something the council felt many years ago it could do to improve the lives of vulnerable people. Even so, you would have thought that someone in your group, with an ounce of compassion, would have questioned whether this was the right thing to do, to cut £4,000 of benefit to the vulnerable and the elderly out of the total budget of £52 million. Well, it's not even a loose change down the back of the settee. But no. No consultation, no consideration, and no thought for those less well off. You just don't care.
Councillor Perrin.
Thank you, Chair. I think no consideration and no care is the theme of the budget that we're debating at the moment. I mean, if it wasn't so, you know, it's a rather vicious budget really when it comes down to it. I mean, let's talk about some of the things that we've been told aren't true and are true. Now, just pick up some of the minor ones first. Through statistics, only 90% of people, 90% of people don't use an nappy-based service. Well, I had a young family. We ran to see if we could use it. It's oversubscribed. There's more people wanting to use it than there's already capacity for. Only 300 people use it a year. Well, those 300 people, I don't know where they think these 300 people live, but they usually have neighbours. That's 600 people that are going to be affected, and if they have a neighbour on the other side, potentially another 300 people. That could be up to 1,000 people in this town that are having effluent sitting in bins outside their houses for the best part of 2 weeks. We talked about, well, we've got to make, Councillor Wilkinson wasn't proud to go back to his booth, to his group and say, well, I've got to raise these charges, I've got to raise support for the nappy waste collection. Because in principle he doesn't agree with council tax cuts and finding money savings elsewhere. So if we took those savings out, if we said, right, okay, fine, you know, have your rise, have your rebate, keep your money where it is. We have found through members' allowances, through subscriptions, through basic stuff like stationery, just looking at prices, not even looking at reprographics, in excess of £35,000 worth of savings. So you don't even need to do half of what we're saying to be compassionate and to allow this service to continue. We've had an omission from the leader of the council tonight. He mentions that the fact that we want to bring the funding of the head of community and keep it in the discretionary service fund is unsustainable. He said it's unsustainable to keep the head of community's salary in the discretionary service fund. Bringing it back into the general fund will make it more sustainable. He's saying that it's unsustainable to keep it in the discretionary services fund because in 2 years there won't be any money left in the discretionary services fund. What funds the discretionary services? What's funded from that? Playhouse, Pets Corner, paddling pools and things like that. Is he saying in 2 years' time that he is planning on those things not being there anymore? Is that what he said here tonight? Because he said to take the salary... No, hang on, I'm speaking and I will be heard. He's speaking, he said that if we don't fund the head of community out of the baseline budget, it's not sustainable. It won't be there in 2 years' time.
not what it said.
Oh, so it is sustainable to keep it in there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, like Councillor Joel. Now, he said about the rebates. He said, well, I'm not one to throw in the towel. I'm not one. I was going to get a good deal, and it wasn't outrageous that I overcharged everybody for it. I don't mind him. I don't mind him saying he's going for the good deal. But the thing is, he told us before the budget was moved last year, he told us at Cabinet, he told us at full council, uncategorically, that the deal was signed off. That it was a done deal. We asked him several times, and he said, no, it's done. The moment the budget was passed, the deal wasn't done, and no negotiations had even begun. So he cannot sit there and then say, I was going for the better deal. There was no deal before he even moved it. So he planned on charging us before he'd even got a deal in place. And now I love the little history lessons we have, and we go back to the 4 years of terrible reign from the Conservatives. Well, there's just a year or two before that, if we want to have a history lesson, a massive £10 million black hole in local government finances at this council. By whom? By the Labour administration. They were reduced to having only 4 members of their team sitting on that side of the chamber because the town realised they had been so shoddy in their management of the finances that they couldn't trust them to run the council. So before they start going for a history lecture on how we should run the place, maybe they ought to look back into the near distant past and start talking about their own history.
Thank you, John Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This year's administration budget sends out wrongly a clear signal to residents and neighbouring local authorities. The dream is over. Our town's promise of delivering a better future is out of reach. It's all doom and gloom under Labour. I'm shocked by the defeatist attitude the leader of the council and his cabinet members spells it out clearly in their budget proposals. Their budget offers residents little imagination of regeneration, more pressure to make ends meet, and no strategy to help build a robust local economy. Labour only know the politics of decline in this town. We've known it through history in this town, and we've seen it today. This budget sets a dangerous path for Harlow, but only the Conservatives offer change for better and a positive plan for the town's future. Yes, it's true that £400,000 will be transferred to the Regeneration Fund under this administration's budget proposals to top up the £1 million on the overall Regeneration Fund that was announced last year, specifically for the Harlow Town Centre regeneration plans. But the problem with Labour is that they have no idea what to do with that money yet, and we're calling for them to set out a clear plan. Now, Councillor Andrew Johnson has led a strong campaign to save Harlow Town Centre, calling for rapid action that forced the administration to say something, and it was about time. Regeneration, particularly on the town centre and in the northern corridor of the town centre, is where we need to focus our energy. Now, Councillor Tony Durkin has talked about a few ideas, but we want to see a concrete strategy for the town centre rapidly. And that's something that Andrew has called for. You've had many years, Councillor Durkin. It's time to stump up with some ideas in a proper strategy. Because of the government's decision, one of the other things I will raise tonight is the administration has been trumpeting, oh, you know, we've got to manage the cuts, you know, it's really terrible in the economy. One of the reasons why it's terrible for this administration to understand how to help the local economy is because they haven't even announced an economic development strategy for this town. We have to wait till November. We need that strategy now. Because of the government's decision to devolve business rates, Harlow has a real chance to deliver the foundations of a strengthened local economy. It's exciting. We should be upbeat as a council about that. Only the Conservatives want this town to thrive. They want to manage a steady decline. We will, in the local election, set out a whole town strategy, focusing on regeneration, building a better tomorrow. This administration has taken years to even start talking about it. This is the 4th year Labour have increased the council tax, a 1.5% hike, and they revel in that. They've also extended the nappies incontinence rates to a fortnightly collection. Now, I'll take no lectures from Councillor Wilkinson on the environment. It was this group, and administration, that doubled the recycling rates in this town, the biggest drive on environmentalism in this town in its history. So I'd ask you to withdraw your claims. Under your administration, recycling has dropped off. They're not interested. Councillor Wilkinson led the charge for the black sacks. That would have been a big success for this town. The truth is, this administration doesn't have a clear plan, but we do. Since the general election, what is apparent is local Labour councillors have increasingly lurched to the left. Now that's dangerous. What we need in this town is a centre-ground party focused on the workers. They've forgotten that principle. They want to deliver a scorched earth policy for this town. It's time for local Conservatives, it's time for this community to send a message to these individuals that the centre ground is where this community should be. We, as a collective, should kick out this social vanity project.
Some interesting points. I find it interesting that the shadow housing portfolio holder was trying to justify the Housing and Planning Act, which at the end of the day is one of the worst things that this majority Conservative government are implementing, and I'll outline some of the reasons why in a minute. I do respect self-financing. I think self-financing is important. We collect the rents, we decide our local priorities, we then allocate those according to our local priorities. So what have we been able to achieve since 2012 with self-financing? £100 million investment into our housing stock to make sure that they are livable, they are decent. We've met the decent home standard, which is something that this council was not able to meet until 2015, which is a sad indictment on previous administrations, including a Labour government which did not allocate enough resources to housing, and I've said that many times. We've maintained decent homes, and we're going to try and maintain them more despite the pressures that are coming. One of the things that I was very keen for in this housing budget was to ensure that we do not cut back on energy efficiency. We need to tackle the scourge of fuel poverty. We need to make sure that people are living in warm homes. We need to make sure that children don't go to bed freezing. We need to make sure that our homes are properly ventilated as well. One of the biggest and proudest achievements of this administration has been to build council houses for the first time in 25 years. Those 18 families that are currently housed in the new homes are having a future that they may not have had. They're having life chances expanded, which may not have happened. Moving forward, in the housing reports, there are 3 key things that are very important. We need to explore more ways of affordable housing. And the Housing and Planning Act, I'm afraid, is going counter to that. We need to improve choices for people in the town so that we can assist people to get more and better housing. And also we need to improve the health and well-being of our tenants through making sure that we meet the regulations and that our houses are fit for purpose. So what are the challenges that have come through? The 1% rent cut, and I'll say it again, we are not opposed to people having a rent cut per se, but you need to do this in the round. What's going to happen is we're going to have a diminished social housing stock, more people into the rented sector at higher rent. So actually it defeats its purpose overall if you look at it in the round. Another issue, as Councillor Danvers mentioned earlier on, is about the £30,000 market rent. £30,000 for 2 people on incomes, perhaps with debt, is going to cause people some financial hardship if they're going to have rents that are doubled. One of the biggest problems that has come about has been from the sale of council housing to fund Housing Association Right to Buy. That is an absolute disgrace that this organisation is having to fund something that's happening from another organisation. And the 4th and final thing that really irritates me, and this changes the outlook on council housing, is the 5-year tenancy limit on council housing. That is a disgrace. Council housing should be secure, it should be affordable, it should be for people to feel that they are members of their community. This is going to cause uncertainty, and that is wrong. And I want to just mention 7 things that I think are very important that need to happen. The first thing is we need to have a focus on more council housing nationally. We need to make sure that, as I said earlier on, there is a Secretary of State for Housing, a department is set up, the leading experts in both the social housing sector and the private housing sector come together, and they spend 6 months in a locked room and come up with some solutions to the housing crisis. This Housing and Planning Act is not going to solve that problem. We need to end the bedroom tax. What a disgrace that has been. We need to make our homes more energy efficient, so we need to make sure that there are schemes that are there for that. We need to have, as I've said, secure tenancies. We need to make sure our homes are affordable. We need to make sure that for every house sold under the right to buy, one is replaced. And that is not happening. It has not happened. And we need to make sure that our council housing stock does not diminish. So as I've said, nearly 100,000 council houses will be lost over the next 3 or 4 years. And also we need to revise our planning laws to make sure that it is easier for councils to build housing. So just in conclusion, self-financing, a very positive thing for Harlow, very positive thing for this town. But we are seeing the dismantling of self-financing. And what can be more noble than people, local people, having a say over their own futures? So Harlow's priority remains to have more and better housing, and we will try within the limits of where we are to achieve this, but we need a government that's going to act. Unfortunately, I don't think that will happen.
Councillor Danlow.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me sign this motion. As you know tonight, I voted in favour of the opposition parties' reform on budget. And one thing I would like to say, I'm sitting here like a fly on the wall listening to this, but all I'm going to put forward is I'm taking on board everything that's been said tonight, right? And all I'm going to say to both parties, administrating and the opposition party, is that hope these plans do go forward. All the promises I'm hearing tonight do go forward for the sake of the number one priority, the people of Harlow. Because all I'm going to say now is myself, my leader and the UKIP Harlow branch, if these promises are broken, we'll be holding both parties to account.
Start this part of the debate by thanking some people as well. I'd like to thank Councillor True and Councillor Carter. Some very interesting speeches in the debate that's focused on housing. The majority of the debate has been focused on the general fund. I understand why people get excited about council tax rises or freezes or cuts, but I think it's really important that we also recognise that the budget does have a large effect on the tenants of this town, and I'd like to thank them both for some of their contributions. Personally, I think it's a wonderful thing that the government has forced a 1% reduction in rents for tenants, and I think a number of the tenants will be very grateful for the Conservative government. Mr. Chairman, we've been given a bit of a history lesson tonight by members opposite. So whilst I've been here, I thought I'd go back in history a little bit. Councillor Herring's already mentioned this, but I've got an answer here. The wonders of the internet is that things stay there forever. Harlow Star, December 13th, 2007. Council turns golden legacy into £1.8 million black hole. The joint leaders of Harlow Council were this week under pressure to resign after a £1.8 million hole in town hall, all finances were revealed. That's one of those was Councillor Durkin. He did actually then go on and resign as group leader before the election. But he wasn't just being criticised by the opposition at the time, he was being criticised by his former leader, Kevin Brooks, who accused the Labour administration of squandering the legacy that left them and warned colleagues who vote with the opposition against proposed cuts. They admitted as well to the Star that the Labour administration had failed to have its budget working group meet for a whole year. That's the kind of things that you get under a Labour administration. Fast forward to the Star in July 2008, where they detailed the potential £10 million black hole that the Labour Party had left the incoming Conservative administration. Why is it, Mr. Chairman, that socialists always run out of other people's money? Yes, 2008-9, 2009-10 were difficult years for the budget, and we may have taken 30 grand from one pot and 30 grand from another to plug a £10 million black hole that had been left by the Labour Party. But what did the Labour Party do during those years? Did they helpfully suggest where the savings could be found for the chaos that they left? No. 2008-9, they did actually move an opposition budget to try and stop the introduction of the waste collection, the wheelie bins, to try and stop the doubling of recycling rates. They weren't keen on recycling back then. Their main item on an opposition budget was to make sure that recycling rates weren't increased. 2009-10, did they move an opposition budget?
No.
2010-11, did they move an opposition budget? No. 2011-12, did they move an opposition budget? No. So they can't do anything when they're in opposition. All they can do when they do take power is offer council tax rise after council tax rise after council tax rise after council tax rise. It's getting boring, I know, but I'm bored with a council tax rise. Councillor Durkin loves to talk about the trees and the pots in Market Square.
Trees.
Yeah, they are dead. Yeah. They are dead. Did you know, Mr. Chairman, that Councillor Durkin voted for those pots and those trees to be there? That's something he doesn't shout about very often. Oh, yes he did! Yes he did! There was a working group, a regeneration working group that he was on, that passed that pots and trees. But do you know what the long-term plan for the pots and trees were, Mr. Chairman? The trees were only meant to be there for a few years, because they were then, when the market was finally generated, meant to be moved to the town park. His administration took over. They didn't regenerate the market, and they certainly didn't move the trees to the town park. Yet Councillor Durkin thinks this is something to crow about. More financial mismanagement by the Labour Party. Let's think about what else they inherited. We sit in this chamber, and up there on that wall is a memorandum of understanding between 3 councils in West Essex, between Uttlesford, Harlow and Epping Forest, signed towards the end of my administration, when we were trying to work with other local authorities to bring about savings that we could all work together with. 3 councils, 3 chief executives, 3 directors of finance, 3 HR departments, 3 finance departments, 3 payroll departments. We had a modest plan to try and sort revenues and benefits out to be shared by the 3 councils. Where did that go once Labour took control? No one knows. Where did any other plans go to share services with other councils? To reduce the burden on our hard-pressed workers in this town, to reduce council tax? No ideas have come forth from the Labour Party. What we have seen, Mr. Chairman, is year-on-year council tax rises and year-on-year frontline service cuts. And don't let them try and tell you that leaving smelly waste in bins for 2 weeks is not a frontline cut. It's a service that's no longer going to be there. Don't let them baffle you with the previous costs of things for bulky waste. I want to look at the cost this year. It's going up 43%. You can't argue about that. If that's not a failure of the front-end service of this council, what is? Mr. Chairman, I'll try and end with two things. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I didn't speak during your speech. Yes, it is incredible. 2 things. The Labour Party always looks forward with doom and gloom. Councillor Downes talks about how we could be fined next year, or rather have our grant reduced if we don't put up council tax. But he doesn't talk about the potential £17 million in business rates that's due to come in the next couple of years to this council. It was announced in October, and I did some quick calculations with a very senior officer of this council before we went to talk to the news people about this. And the officer in this council confirmed that my back of the fag packet calculations were right. It was about £17 million. But you don't hear them shouting about how much of that money we're going to receive that will help plug their back.
Until we receive it.
I know tonight, Mr. Chairman, has been fraught with back and forth, party politics, he said, she said, nasty, 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 you hate the Tories, we hate Labour. That's what budget nights are all about. But I'd like to appeal to the party opposite on one thing. Don't let your budget go past tonight without looking and finding a grand. 100 years ago this year, the biggest battle that ever took place in Europe, bigger than any battle that had ever been fought in this council chamber, took place. This council's got a very good record of celebrating and commemorating events. And I'd ask the Labour Party, before they pass their budget tonight, to just look and see if they can find £1,000 to try and help the town celebrate the centenary of 100 years of the Battle of the Somme. Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, sorry, I'm back as obviously. Mr. Chairman, I will not be supporting the Labour Party budget.
Councillor Johnson, now if you'll just take a glance at the clock, there is something that we have to do if you wish to continue.
Shall I move to suspend standing orders?
Seconded.
Does anybody disagree with extending Thank you. Rule, we can extend the debate. And next to speak, I think, is Councillor Clark.
Just one specific point, Chair, on the song. We have agreed already to commemorate the Battle of the Somme. It's just a question of organising the meeting, frankly. And we're going to do it without any expense in the budget. There's no need to raise £1,000. It's already incorporated within the budget. But while I'm on the feet, just a comment on sorry. What we haven't talked about, and I've heard a total neglect of the government's role in producing this budget, but what they've neglected to point out is the gradual demolition of the basic functions of the state. And I think it's worth stating the fact that this budget represents a shrinkage of the state which is happening nationally. And it entails the loss, indeed, of the very idea of public service. The government is trying to force councils over and over again to outsource everything, and I'm very proud that Harlow is resisting this trend. But we're in for a long haul. By 2020, the state will have shrunk to a third, smaller even the United States and well below European countries like Germany. And it's being accompanied by endless austerity, as we've seen. So our cut of 14.6% has been followed, will be followed by an increasing squeeze subsequently. And as Mike said, even David Cameron had not the faintest idea how deep the cuts were and was very disappointed at the significance of the cuts for frontline services. So don't talk about us being responsible for cuts in services and frontline services. It is ultimately the government that is forcing an increase in food banks, increase in poverty, especially child poverty, a rise generally in people losing benefits. And I know that I'm overstaying my welcome on this, Chair, when we're continuing talking, but bear in mind that the government is sending the sick out to work for jobs or look for jobs which don't exist and then are penalised because they can't find them. So over and over again, what we're seeing this government do is say, do more for less, at great cost to more vulnerable people, while making it more and more difficult for local councils to support those most vulnerable people, and it is shameful, Chair.
Councillor Toll.
Thanks, Chair. It's been a very bizarre debate tonight. I've got to say, actually, over my 4 years here, some of my favourite debates have been on Budget Council night, but they always kind of astound me the way they go. But I think there are skewed memories, and there's a they said, he said, Labour once had 6 members, Tories forgets Andrew Johnson was once on his own as councillor. His is very impressive knowledge of standing order, which hats off to him here. He knows how to use, and maybe other smaller opposition groups could use it more to be a more effective opposition. And, you know, but you are right, there was a legacy, and I came in when we took administration in 2012, came in as a new councillor and came in to what had been left behind. One of the first things we looked at was some of the talk about sustainability that the supposed administration had left us before, was the Playhouse, Pets Corner, paddling pools, all with 1 year's funding left. And sat there with these, and they keep going on now, these big society funds, with 1 year, they would have closed in 2013 if this administration hasn't worked really hard, not only to set a fund up to secure medium term, because I admit that fund is not long term, but has now worked hard to try and establish to get long-term funding. And actually, I'd like to thank members members on both sides of the chamber have been working hard to look at the future of the playhouse and other things that we're doing that we can look at before 2018. So it's done properly, not like the rush job the last administration did in trying to offload it before they lost control when they knew they were. And they talk about nappies, they keep talking about this nappy collection. I would love to keep the 2-week collection, and we've had a look, it's something we've tossed and looked at for things. But it's not true to say they'll be left for 2 weeks. The reason why we're reducing it to every other week, so that it will coincide with the collection of recycling. So on the alternative week that it will not be collected, it will be in normal waste where they're allowed to be collected. Waste will still be collected every single week for nappies, because on those that have it, they will get it on the normal waste, which it can go in, which most people households use it, and then on the alternative week, that is when it will be collected. It's not ideal, but it's a situation we're in with this current government. We're currently looking at our customer service review and how we can engage better at customers and looking forward to keeping that long-term post of community wellbeing, head of community wellbeing, really trying to reach forward and make sure we're engaging with our community better, make sure our wellbeing is better. But do you know what? You keep saying you're effective opposition, and you're pretty right, and I really hope you continue to be an effective opposition for many years. You keep talking about the elections, and you keep saying vote Tory, and let's be clear, we're all here because you're trying to come for election. I'm here because I want to serve my residents. I'm here because I want to do the best for my town, and I'm here to protect their interests. And yes, I will do my political campaigning outside. Yes, I do think your Tory government is disgraceful. I think the sham they're doing on the housing reform bill is appalling. Their slushy Tory government is appalling. But what I'm here to discuss is how I think we've done a pretty damn good job of trying to protect services, protect our workers, and protect the people of Harlow. It's not easy being administration, it isn't always the easy thing to do, and it's not the short-term solutions. We did the right thing when it came to the traveller improper illegal injunction. We had to get the illegal travellers, and we got the injunction. We will continue to do the best for the long-term future of Harlow, and I hope we'll be in administration to see it through.
Councillor Clinton, are you ready to sum up?
I hope Councillor Hart will forgive me if I remain seated. Grandstanding in the chamber is not my normal mode of operation. I occasionally get goaded into it, but I will stay seated. I'm going to address some very specific points first of all. So, Councillor Perry made a number of assertions about things I said, and he clearly has a problem with language. So let's put it in simpler terms. If you take wadges of cash out of the thing that funds the playhouse and the pets corner and the paddling pools, it's not sustainable. If you take wadges of cash away from the thing that's going to make sure the streetlights stay on for the next 4 years, that's not sustainable. If you take wadges of cash out of reserves that are designed to guard against the uncertainty that this government is providing, then that's not sustainable. I hope that's quite clear. But clearly, the party opposite has a general problem with language. It's used the term the Workers' Party. I mean, it's almost Orwellian newspeak. They talk about the national living wage, which is no such thing. They've even changed the definition of child poverty so they can meet So now we have conversations about scaremongering and turn over here. But talk about effluent in the bins. Now, it's quite a long time since my children were in nappies, but even in those days, they had invented nappy sacks. And it is just absolutely ridiculous. We talked about shared services. I'm absolutely happy to support shared services. Actually, I had a conversation with the Chief Executive at Bepping Forest Council within the last week on that very subject. And the reason why the half-baked proposal that was put forward by the previous administration didn't go through was because Ottlesford pulled out of it, not for any willingness on the part of this administration. There's this sort of jam tomorrow and a pot of gold around business rate, and I absolutely look forward to being able to retain the business rate rather than giving it to the government and then giving us some of it back. But there are so many caveats in the announcements of this about how equalisation is going to be done, about what additional responsibilities the council will have to take on. There is no certainty. Now, if we keep it, that'll be great, but I have to plan for the future. I'm going to two final points, and I will end. So first of all, I would absolutely like to endorse a few members who've congratulated and thanked the officers who have supported my cabinet very strongly in producing a strong and sustainable budget. But I'll end where I started, about my normal style not being grandstanding. I've not produced a budget with my cabinet this administration for the next budget will leaflet. I've produced with the cabinet a budget that is sustainable as far as is possible with the government. And yes, we have an incredibly ambitious and forward-looking and positive programme around the planetary regeneration and jobs and growth and infrastructure in Harlow, which we're lobbying very hard for. But you can't just take short-term decisions, take decisions that are not sustainable, and then pretend that you're all the good guys. I will do what's right for Harlow, what's right for this council, what's right for the services that Harlow people provide, and I commend this budget.
Thank you. That sums up the debate. We now have to move to the vote, which has to be a named vote. So how are we going to achieve that?
Mr. Chairman, I will read out the councillors' names, and if they say for the motion, against the motion, or abstain, then I call their name. Councillor Beckett. For the motion. Councillor David Carter. Against. Councillor Simon Carter. Against. Councillor Charles. Against. Councillor Churchill. Against. Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor John Klempner. For. Councillor Karen Klempner.
For.
Councillor Danvers. For. Councillor Davis. For. Councillor Durkin. For. Councillor Foreman.
For.
Councillor Hall.
Abstain.
Councillor Holcoop.
For.
Councillor Andrew Johnson.
Against Labour's tax rise.
Councillor Eddie Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Shona Johnson.
I've got no voice.
Oh, can we guess? Do it, sign language.
Councillor Livings.
Against.
Councillor Long. Against. Councillor McCabe.
For.
Councillor Perrin.
Against.
Councillor Purton.
For.
Councillor Souter.
Against.
Councillor Strachan.
For.
Councillor Stevens.
Abstain.
Councillor Toll.
For Harlow's future.
Councillor Truan.
For.
Councillor Waite.
For.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Definitely for.
Chairman, the result of that is 60 for the motion, 11 against, and 2 abstentions. Motion's obviously
We move on to item 10. There are no reports from officers. Item 11, minutes of cabinet and committee meetings.
Agreed.
No matters of urgent business. No. May I thank all members for an interesting and forceful debate.